Ethan had always prided himself on his loyalty and commitment to his wife, Sophia. They had been married for 8 years. Though they had their ups and downs, Ethan believed they shared an unbreakable bond. That belief was shattered one evening when he found a series of suspicious messages on Sophia's phone while she was in the shower. At first, Ethan tried to dismiss the gut-wrenching feeling that gnawed at him. He thought there must be some explanation, but the messages were unmistakable. A series of exchanges with someone named Alex, culminating in plans for a secret meeting. Ethan's world tilted, but instead of confronting her immediately, he decided to play the long game. He spent the next few months gathering evidence. He tracked Sophia's activities discreetly, installed software on their shared devices, and noticed her increasingly elaborate excuses for staying out late or working weekends. What hurt the most was how easily she lied to him. She would kiss him goodbye, claiming she was meeting a friend, while Ethan knew exactly where she was going. During those months, Ethan kept his knowledge to himself. He pretended everything was fine, though his heart grew colder with every passing day. He focused on planning his next move. This wouldn't be a typical confrontation. Ethan wanted to send her a message she would never forget. One evening, Sophia returned home to find Ethan unusually cheerful. He had cooked dinner and poured them both a glass of wine. Over the meal, he told her about a surprise weekend getaway he had planned for their upcoming anniversary. Sophia's face lit up with a mix of surprise and guilt, but she agreed without hesitation. When the weekend arrived, Ethan drove them to a luxurious beach resort. The place was breathtaking. White sands, turquoise waters, and a private villa that screamed romance. Sophia seemed genuinely touched, but Ethan noticed her sneaking glances at her phone. On the second evening, Ethan suggested a private dinner on the beach. As they sipped champagne under the moonlight, Ethan pulled out a small box and handed it to her. Sophia looked puzzled but opened it to find a key. "What's this for?" she asked, smiling. "It's the key to your new place," Ethan replied calmly. Sophia's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "It's the apartment I rented for you. Since you and Alex seem so close, I thought you'd appreciate having a space where you can be together without sneaking around." Sophia's face drained of color. "Ethan, Save it," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "I've known for months, Sophia. Every lie, every excuse, every time you said you were with a friend. I know. I've seen the messages, the photos, the hotel bookings." Tears filled her eyes. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. No, Sophia," he said, cutting her off again. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary or burning dinner. What you did was a choice, a series of choices. And now I'm making mine." Ethan stood and tossed an envelope onto the table. Inside were divorce papers, along with a detailed record of her affair. "Sign these," he said coldly. "You can keep the apartment for 6 months. After that, you're on your own." Sophia sobbed, but Ethan felt no sympathy. For months, he had mourned the woman he thought she was. Now, he was ready to move on, leaving her to face the consequences of her betrayal. As Ethan walked away from the table, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about reclaiming his dignity and showing her that actions have consequences. Sophia had made her choice, and now, so had he. The days following that evening at the beach resort were a blur for Sophia. She spent the first few hours in disbelief, struggling to grasp the reality of what was happening. Her heart raced as she frantically tried to apologize, to explain, to make him understand that it was all a mistake. But nothing she said seemed to make a difference. Ethan, on the other hand, was resolute. He had spent weeks planning this moment, carefully crafting every detail of her downfall. He offered no comfort or hope for reconciliation. He was done. There was no going back for him. The following days were excruciating for Sophia. The cold, hard truth settled in, and she realized the gravity of her betrayal. The apartment key, a symbol of her affair with Alex, now sat on her dresser, mocking her. She had thought she could keep both worlds separate, her family and her secret life. But now, both were falling apart. Ethan had given her a painful gift, the chance to see her own life unravel. After they returned from the trip, Sophia tried to reach out to Ethan, but he avoided her. He had already made it clear that his heart was no longer in their marriage. It wasn't just the affair that had destroyed their relationship. It was the constant lying, manipulation, and the erosion of trust. Sophia had underestimated the depth of his pain and the lengths he was willing to go to for his own peace. As the weeks passed, the divorce papers were finalized. Sophia moved into the apartment Ethan had arranged for her, but it felt cold and lifeless. It wasn't a place of freedom or excitement. It was a prison she had built for herself. Alex, the man she had betrayed her husband for, visited occasionally, but their interactions were devoid of joy. He never took her seriously, and the affair that had once been an escape now felt hollow. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her every day. Ethan, meanwhile, found a strange sense of relief. He threw himself into work, spent time with friends he had neglected, and began rediscovering parts of himself that had been lost in the haze of his marriage. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but there was an odd comfort in knowing he had taken control of his own future. He was no longer trapped in a marriage built on lies. Months later, Sophia tried to reach out one final time. She sent Ethan a message asking if they could meet to talk. She claimed that she had changed, that she was sorry, and that she wanted to make things right. Ethan read her message and felt a brief twinge of sadness, but it was quickly replaced by clarity. He knew their marriage was over. There was no going back to what they once had. Instead of agreeing to meet, Ethan responded simply, "You made your choice, and I've made mine. It's over, Sophia." He never heard from her again. In the end, Ethan didn't seek revenge in the way most people would expect. There was no dramatic confrontation or cruel punishment. Instead, his revenge was in reclaiming his own life, peace, and happiness. It was a subtle, quiet victory, but it was enough. As for Sophia, she was left to face the consequences of her actions, with only the emptiness of her choices to keep her company. Sophia's life, once filled with promise and the illusion of happiness, continued to spiral downward. In the months that followed, her affair with Alex had left her more isolated than ever. The harsh reality of being alone in the apartment Ethan had arranged for her was a constant reminder of what she had lost. The excitement of sneaking around, the thrill of secret messages, and the false sense of freedom Alex had promised her all evaporated, leaving a bitter taste of regret. Alex, who had once seemed like an escape from her life with Ethan, grew distant. He no longer showered her with attention, and the romantic gestures that once made her feel desire became sparse. Sophia began to notice his lack of commitment and reluctance to invest in a future with her. It wasn't long before she realized that Alex had never been in it for the long haul. He was just another chapter in the story of her poor choices. Meanwhile, Ethan's life continued to evolve. The pain of his wife's betrayal had not disappeared, but he had learned to live with it. He was moving forward, free from the weight of her lies and ready for a future where he was in control. Though the pain wasn't completely gone, it was becoming more manageable. Ethan started dating again, though he remained cautious. He wasn't in a rush to find someone new. He wanted to heal first, to rediscover who he was outside the confines of a broken marriage. His friends noticed a change in him. He was lighter, more confident, and seemed to find joy in the simple things again. One night, about 6 months after the divorce, Ethan ran into Sophia at a mutual friend's party. She was standing by the bar, sipping a drink, looking out of place. Her once carefully styled appearance now seemed disheveled, as though the weight of everything had caught up with her. She noticed him immediately, her face flushing with a mix of guilt and hope. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice trembling, "can we talk?" Ethan studied her for a moment, remembering the woman who had once been the love of his life, but also the woman who had broken his trust so completely. His heart no longer ached with the same intensity it once did. Instead, it was a dull pain, a scar that would never fully heal but no longer controlled him. "There's nothing left to talk about, Sophia," Ethan replied calmly, his voice steady. "You made your choices and I made mine. I've moved on." Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She wanted to explain, to apologize, but deep down she knew that no words could undo the damage. Ethan wasn't the man she had left behind. He had rebuilt himself into someone stronger, someone who no longer needed her. With a sigh, Sophia nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She turned to walk away, and Ethan watched her retreating figure, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. He knew she had to face the consequences of her actions, and he was no longer responsible for her pain. In the months that followed, their paths crossed only occasionally. Each time, Sophia seemed to have lost a little more of the spark she once had. She became more reclusive, spending her days in the apartment that had once felt like a fresh start, but now felt like a cage. She had no one to blame but herself. Ethan, on the other hand, continued to move forward. He had met someone new, a woman who appreciated him for who he was. She showed him that love could exist without betrayal. He no longer held on to the past, and with each passing day, the anger and heartbreak faded into distant memories. Sophia's revenge, if she had ever intended it, had backfired. She had tried to take control of her life by leaving Ethan for a fleeting affair, but in the end, it was Ethan who had gained the upper hand. He had found peace, while she was left to grapple with the emptiness of her choices. As time went on, the pain of the past faded, and Ethan realized that his true revenge was simply living well, living without regret, living with the confidence that he was worthy of something better than the betrayal he had endured. For Sophia, the lesson was painfully clear. Actions have consequences, and sometimes the hardest lesson of all is learning to live with them.